Welcome to the Wicket.
Hello and welcome to your usual serving of cricket chat from Arab News here at the Wicket. I'm Brian Murgatroyd, and with me to chew over the happenings in all things cricket are Jon Pike, the Arab News columnist, and Subas Humagain, Arab News cricket reporter. Hello, gentlemen. How are you?
Good morning. Yep, all ready to go.
Yeah, all set, Brian.
Well, we look back on the first men's test between Australia and Pakistan in Perth with a crushing win for the hosts. We talk women's cricket, reviewing the latest international action in India, New Zealand and South Africa, as well as the Africa qualifier for next year's T20 World Cup. We assess the West Indies-England men's T20I series that's ongoing in the Caribbean. We chat about South Africa-India and that men's white ball action going on in South Africa. There's the first two one-day internationals of a series between New Zealand and Bangladesh to digest. We reflect on the island Zimbabwe men's white ball series that's wrapped up in Harare. We look back on the auctions ahead of next year's Pakistan Super League and Indian Premier League. We wrap up the Asian Cricket Council's Under-19 Asia Cup. And we discuss developments in the UAE's own T20 franchise league, the ILT20. So, as ever, lots here to get our teeth into, so here goes. Let's start with Australia against Pakistan, and I think, as most people predicted, the first test in Perth went emphatically in favour of the hosts. They won by 360 runs with a day to spare. David Warner answered his critics with a tone-setting 164 on day one. Mitchell Marsh was player of the match for innings of 90 and 63, plus the wicket of Babar Azam. Alex Carey took his 100th test dismissal, and Nathan Lyon reached 500 test wickets on his comeback from the calf injury that cut short his Ashes campaign. For Pakistan, well, positives were thin on the ground, but the two seam bowling debutants, Amar Jamal with 6 wickets in the first innings and Khurram Shahzad with 5 wickets in the match, could walk away with their heads held high. John, this was Australia at their brutal best in home conditions, wasn't it?
Absolutely, and it's no surprise. Relentless pressure throughout the match. It was a good toss to win. The wicket deteriorated. Some deliveries reared and others kept low. And, Pakistan only lasted, 30 overs in the second innings. I think it's also worth noting the attendance over the 4 days, short of 60,000 in a 60,000 capacity stadium. So Test cricket really does have to watch out for itself in terms of attendance at some of the matches.
Subas, did you see anything from Pakistan that encourages you to think they'll be competitive in the Boxing Day test in Melbourne or the New Year test in Sydney?
Pakistan, I think the way they started their innings was excellent. They were on the game until day 2, but they couldn't continue the same on day 3. I think they lost 3 important wickets after the drinks in morning session and just kept them away after the lunch, and Khawaz and Marsh took the game away thereafter. Pakistan didn't put any fight in the 4th innings. From what we saw in Perth, I think this is going to be a long series for Pakistan. If you want to give a fight down under, you'll need to bat long and hard like India did, and I think that's something Pakistan is missing, and I don't see any chances looking at the performance right now.
Well, the second test starts on Boxing Day, December the 26th in Melbourne, and prior to that, Pakistan have shoehorned in an extra 2-day practice match in Melbourne in an attempt to ensure they're absolutely ready to go for that 26th of December. Let's talk women's cricket now, and let's start with the India-England test match in Mumbai. And what a comprehensive win for India, humbling the visitors by 347 runs in 3 days. England were bowled out for 136 and 131, and they looked ill-equipped to cope with conditions with a ball turned as Deepti Sharma took a scarcely believable 9 for 39 in the match. John, Heather Knight tried to brush the result aside afterwards, and to an extent she has a point. There wasn't much preparation time for her side. They don't play a lot of red ball cricket. Conditions were not what England are used to, and the team won the T20I series, which, with the T20 World Cup next year had to be a priority. All the same, wasn't great from an England perspective, was it?
No, it's very disappointing. England's frailties against spin had been trailed, but this was pretty much a disaster. I mean, neither side had played much red ball cricket. It seemed that India adapted much better, admitted in local conditions, after they'd played some below par T20 cricket. And it must put them in very good heart for the upcoming test against Australia, which is the first one in India, I think, since 1983-84.
Yes, it's been a long time coming, but I just wonder, Subas, could this result and India's success actually be a serious shot in the arm for women's Test cricket? After all, India is the game's most influential board, so if they suddenly start to want more tests, then that has to be good for the format, doesn't it?
Yeah, Brian, it's good for the format and whole of women's game. Actually, there were numbers in attendance for the game too. WPL seems to have brought some limelight into women's game in India, which was missing for a long time. And it is only better if they get more games, especially in the longer formats. Like Heather Knight mentioned, I think there has been very less red ball cricket in a women's game. And if India wants to play, I think there will be boards crowding around wanting to play them. And the more the matches, the merrier.
Next up, there's another test match for India, this time against Australia, starting on December the 22nd. In New Zealand, the hosts secured a measure of revenge for the T20I series loss by exacting a 2-1 series win over visitors Pakistan in the all-important ODI series. But after New Zealand's comfortable win in match 1 of the series, which we covered in the previous podcast, matches 2 and 3 were thrillers. New Zealand won the second game by 1 wicket, with the last pair adding 13 to scrape over the line, before match 3 saw a tie settled in a super over with a Pakistan win. That success in the final game of the tour has pushed Pakistan up to second in the ICC Women's Championship table, with the top 6 sides qualifying for the One Day International Cricket World Cup. But that position is deceptive, as Pakistan have played more matches than any other side in the table and is still likely to drop out of the top 6 when all matches are played. With the result, it will probably have to compete in the qualifier for a spot in that World Cup. Subas, all the same, it's still been a very good tour for Pakistan in unfamiliar conditions, and that win in match 3 was Pakistan's first against New Zealand in New Zealand and only their second in 17 one-day internationals between the teams.
Yeah, the result didn't go their way overall, but I think they've been inconsistent throughout this journey. And the last 2 matches, I think that they'll get some positives out of that. But I think Pakistan, they didn't perform up to the caliber in this overall series. We saw them struggling in Bangladesh. That was a big surprise. And I think New Zealand, they went there in hope of getting something out, and glad that they got the third ODI in their favour.
John, how do you see things shaping up now in the Women's Championship table?
I think it's worth reminding ourselves that each team plays 24 matches in 8 3-match series. Pakistan's now played 18 of those 24. And whilst they are joint second, teams between second and 7th spots are separated by only 3 points. So there's much to play for. India will qualify as hosts, so the other 5 are likely to be Australia, New Zealand, England, South Africa, probably +1 from Pakistan, Bangladesh, or maybe Sri Lanka.
In South Africa, as we record this podcast on Wednesday, December the 20th, the hosts are playing Bangladesh in Potchefstroom in the second one-day international of their 3-match series, and it follows a stunning 119-run win for Bangladesh in the first match in East London. Subas, that win for Bangladesh in the opening match of the series just underlines the progress they continue to make, doesn't it?
Yes, indeed. I think we've been heaping praise on Bangladesh progress for the start, and they've just continued their form. Murshida once again was brilliant, this time dropping in at number 3 to let experienced Fargana Haq open the innings, and that came up really well. Bangladesh were impressive as a bowling unit, but I think lately their batting unit have stepped up and they've produced results on their favour due to that.
John, the loss for South Africa in one of the 2 completed T20Is and the thrashing they received in the first one-day international, is it a blip, a sign of Bangladesh's rapid improvement, or something more worrying for South Africa to digest?
I think it's a sign of Bangladesh's improvement. If they continue this way, then it will be the first series win in South Africa. I think, as Subas mentioned, the disciplined bowling unit. I think South Africa have been below par, and should they lose this next match, then I think it would be worrying. And on top of that, they have to go away to Australia and India.
The Africa Women's T20 World Cup qualifier wrapped up in Entebbe, Uganda on Sunday, December the 17th, with Zimbabwe beating Uganda by 6 wickets to secure the title. But of greater importance was that both sides sealed their spots in the global qualifier that's set to take place in the UAE next year. It was an 8-team event in Uganda, with the other teams taking part being Tanzania, Botswana, Kenya, Namibia, Rwanda and Nigeria. And the final produced a special moment, with Zimbabwe off-spinner Precious Marange taking a hat-trick as part of a stunning set of figures of 5 for 7. Zimbabwe and Uganda will go forward to join Ireland, the Netherlands, Scotland, Sri Lanka, Thailand, the UAE, the USA and Vanuatu in the global qualifier, with 2 of the 10 teams in action earning spots in the main event in Bangladesh, alongside the hosts, plus Australia, England, India, New Zealand, the West Indies, Pakistan and South Africa. Subas, you've sung the praises of Uganda's women before on this podcast, and this, I guess, is an illustration of the progress they're making.
Uganda, I think they're getting rewards for their investment into the game. Also, a lesson to others that if you give time, it will certainly give results. Uganda have really made most out of Africa's rise in cricket. They are constantly playing matches around, and that has helped them elevate the game. They were unbeaten until the finals, and I think they gave Zimbabwe a run for their money looking at the quality of squads. They played in home soil, which was a bit of an advantage, but now that global qualifiers is around, I think they'll test themselves in new conditions against new teams, and I think this is a good thing for overall African cricket itself.
John, the makeup of that global qualifier now confirmed, and I think everyone would expect Sri Lanka, who, let's not forget, won a series against England in September, to be one of the 2 sides to go through. That makes it a really cutthroat process to see which side will take the other spot. Who do you have faith in to take that spot? And isn't it a sign, perhaps, that the next edition of the T20 World Cup should be expanded to take in more of these teams?
It's certainly a very competitive scenario. In terms of rankings for those teams, Zimbabwe, Thailand, Scotland, the UAE are locked into positions 11 and 15 on the rankings. And yes, I agree, it would be good to see more of them playing at the top table, getting more exposure and improving along the way.
Let's look back now on matches 2, 3 and 4 of the West Indies-England men's T20I series. The West Indies won the first match, which we spoke about in our previous podcast, before taking a 2-0 lead in the 5-game series with a 10-run win in match 2. Brandon King made 82 not out from 52 balls, and captain Rovman Powell a 28-ball 50 as the home side made 176 for 7, and England fell those 10 runs short despite Sam Curran's fighting 50. But then England started the fight back. In match 3, they rallied in an incredible run chase as Phil Salt made an unbeaten 109 from 56 balls, while Harry Brook chipped in with an incredible 31 not out from just 7 deliveries to see Joss Butler's side home. They chased down West Indies 222 for 6 with 7 wickets and 1 ball in hand. They scored 86, if you can believe that, in the last 29 balls faced to win the match. And in match 4, England went even further. They scored 267 in just those 20 overs, including another 100 from Phil Salt to level the series up at 2 apiece. John, there's been an increasing amount of pressure on England white ball coach Matthew Mott with England's recent white ball form. How justified is it, and has Phil Salt helped to save his job?
Well, there'll be a lot of relief after the 3rd match and even more after the 4th match. I think there are signs of England settling down. It takes a while for a new coach to come in. There's also been quite a bit of churn in the team, and it's good to see the smile back on Butler's face. So I think they've turned the corner. I was never disheartened or dispirited, but I think they've shown that there's far too much talent in the team for them to not succeed.
Subas, the West Indies have Rovman Powell as captain, Sherfane Rutherford, Andre Russell, Jason Holder. It's a really strong middle order. The batting looks in good order, in fact. But how content are you with their bowling going into next year's ICC T20 World Cup, given the thrashings they've taken in matches 3 and 4?
West Indies for me looks like an unpredictable team at the moment. I think on the day they can take on any side. Their batting lineup is lengthy and had some serious firepower too. The order is sorted there. But with bowling, I think they have far too many options, and this may be a problem. They lack proper leader in the bowling attack for me. Akil Hossain, I think, is a sort of spinner with Godakesh Moti having had his impressive CPL campaign. But in pace, I think they have too many options. Alzari, Forde, Hossain fighting for the spot. Holder, Russell, and Mayers, I think they can cover, but still they struggle in the death overs, and that we've seen in England tour as well.
Let's chat now about India against South Africa. And it appears that South Africa, in winning the second men's T20I against India, have grabbed the tiger's tail, as India have reacted with two stunning performances. First, to level up the three-match T20I series. Remember, the first match was washed out, and then inflict a thrashing on the hosts in the first one-day international of the tour. But then, in match 2 of the one-day international series, the tables were well and truly turned. South Africa thrashed India this time, bowling them out for 211 before Tony de Zorzi's maiden international 100 gave them an 8-wicket win with 45 balls in hand. Subas, how do you account for such wildly fluctuating results?
I think experimentation on the side has brought India to this. They announced multi-format squads with lots of changes in between, and even from game 1 to game 2, I think there were changes in batting order and personnel as well. Sai Sudarshan looks to have grasped the opportunity with both hands, but in the middle, it didn't fare out well. Rinku Singh's ODI debut, it didn't go as planned, but I think South Africa, on the other hand, they stuck to the plans. De George's batting was a treat to watch for the fans after bowling units. Fantastic job, and I think Thursday's decider, I think that will be exciting to see.
John, the openers for both sides have grabbed their chances. Sai Sudarshan with 250s in his first 2 one-day internationals, and de Zorzi, of course. Has anyone else caught your attention?
The other opener to look out for is getting a second chance is Matthew Breeska. He hasn't scored too many runs yet. And then on the bowling side, I think the one to look out for is Nandre Berger, who had got 3 for 30, I think, in the second ODI. So South Africa also looking to blood talent, and seems to be some coming through.
Well, if it seems like no time at all since Bangladesh and New Zealand were doing battle in a test series in Bangladesh, well, you'd be right. But now here they are, almost 7,000 miles away from Dhaka, playing white ball cricket in Dunedin and Nelson. New Zealand won a rain-shortened first match of the series by 44 runs, with Will Young making 105, while Tom Latham made 92. And in Game 2, which wrapped up in Nelson just before we recorded this podcast, it was an excellent win for New Zealand by 7 wickets. Despite Sumya Sharka's brilliant 169, it wasn't enough to stop New Zealand cruising home, chasing the 292 they required for victory with more than 3 overs in hand. John, surely nothing says the madness of modern cricket scheduling than this series, so hot on the heels of the two sides playing each other in a different format on another continent.
This is true, but it is modern cricket, and they have to fill in order to follow their rankings. So it's in a way inevitable.
Sebastian, no surprise that the home side has won both matches so far in conditions they're far more used to than, of course, Bangladesh. And the ease with which New Zealand chased down that target in match 2 really shows that these days 300 is very much a par score.
Yeah, New Zealand have won the match, but I think Bangladesh gave them a good fight. Soumya Sarkar stood tall and scored big, but I think New Zealand are too good in the backyard, some good partnership in between, and they were home without any hiccups. Young and Nichols, both of them missed out on 3 figures, but good thing is they're on course for a 3-0 win, and that matters more. I think New Zealand at home, I think they're just a team to beat.
Let's talk now about Zimbabwe against Ireland. And Ireland's men have completed a highly successful white ball tour of Zimbabwe by adding a 2-0 one-day international series win against the hosts to an earlier 2-1 success in the T20I series in Paul Stirling's first tour as the full-time limited overs captain. Zimbabwe's batting was the issue in the one-day international series. They stood at 121 for 6 when rain came to wash out match 1. but then could muster only 166 and 197 in matches 2 and 3, with Ireland winning by 4 and 7 wickets respectively. Subas, there were new faces in the Zimbabwe lineup, but after failing to reach both the Cricket World Cup and the T20 World Cup, and now this disastrous white ball campaign against Ireland, how deep is the hole Zimbabwe now found themselves in? And is there a way out of it, at least in the short term?
Well, the pen doesn't look to go away from Zimbabwe at the moment. Raja's captaincy hasn't worked for them looking at the results, but I think they have to perform as a batting unit. They've failed in that. If you are not putting big scores in your home turf, I think that is a problem. And they've changed personnel in between. There's quality in the lineup that we can see, but they're just going through a rough phase against Ireland. I think Ireland stuck to their plans, got the results, but Zimbabwe they couldn't perform at their best. And to have that performance in front of the home fans, I think that adds up to the pressure. All eyes will be in the Sri Lanka tour next month in a very different condition, and hopefully they'll have something out from there.
John, what a great tour for Ireland. Andrew Balbirnie's now back in the ranks and making runs. And with seam bowlers Josh Little, Mark Adair and Graham Hume, who had a really good series, plus George Dockrell, Harry Tector and Curtis Camphor in the middle order, they've got the makings of a competitive white ball side. And it's a real contrast to their disappointing Cricket World Cup qualifying campaign in Zimbabwe less than 6 months ago. What's changed for them, do you think, apart from the captaincy, obviously?
Well, they played with a sense and purpose. I understand that Balbirnie and Sterling are good mates, so I think there's harmony in the camp. Maybe just a fresh look at things. But I think the most impressive aspect to it has been the pace bowlers, as you mentioned, and there's been some very good work done in that respect by Ryan Eagleson. So it's great to see Ireland doing well and putting away the blues of previous competition. And I'd like to think they're going from strength to strength here.
Let's talk auctions now. And the Pakistan Super League and Indian Premier League auctions have taken place since our last podcast. The Pakistan Super League auction took place in Lahore on December the 13th, and Lahore Qalandars, the defending champions, have bolstered their ranks by recruiting South African batter Rassie van der Dussen and destructive Pakistan batter Fakhar Zaman. The runners-up in the latest edition, played earlier this year, the Multan Sultans, have signed up England duo David Willey and David Malan, while Kieran Pollard is heading to Karachi Kings. Subas, what were your headlines from the auction?
Brian, I think it has to be Pollard. I think he's still in demand as a player in the leagues around the world, but is seated as a coaching team in IPL. And to have him as top pick with not so much competitive cricket is a big risk for me. Also, Noor Ahmad getting picked by Jalmi. Prospect of Riza Hendricks and David Malan opening for Multan is an exciting thing to see. Lao, they have strengthened their batting unit with Fakhar and Rassie in the team. And I think something that went overlooked is Nasim Shah will be playing with his younger brothers, Hunain Shah and Ubaid Shah in Islamabad. And Nasim straight away denied that they were there because of him, but their hard work.
John, there's a huge amount of overseas talent in the PSL now. Where do you think it sits in the grand scheme of things, the tournament? Obviously, the IPL is the number one T20 franchise tournament, but surely the PSL now has a legitimate claim to be second in the pecking order ahead of the Big Bash in Australia and the Caribbean Premier League, with new leagues like the SA20 and the UAE's own ILT20 still trying to establish their credibility. Is the PSL number two for you now?
I think it depends on what criteria you use. You've got a choice out of player salary, revenue, digital rights, ownership type, market valuation, prize money, player status, geographical distribution of the players. Obviously, none of them match IPL. I don't think there's that much between PSL and BBL at this stage.
The Indian Premier League auction took place for the first time away from India in Dubai on Tuesday, December the 19th, and there was a massive amount of spending from the franchises. By my reckoning, there were at least $7 millionaires created, with Pat Cummins going to Sunrisers Hyderabad and Mitchell Starc heading to the Kolkata Knight Riders. They were the two players who topped $2 million in auction fees. In fact, Stark's price almost went to $3 million. On top of that, New Zealander Daryl Mitchell went for $1.7 million to Chennai. West Indies fast bowler Alzari Joseph cost Royal Challengers Bangalore $1.4 million. Young Australia fast bowler Spencer Johnson headed to the Gujarat Titans off the back of a $1.2 million fee. And there were young India players as well. Harsha Patel, who cost Punjab Kings $1.4 million, and Samir Rizvi, who went to Chennai for an eye-watering $1.12 million. John, what did you make of it? And were you surprised at any players not signed, such as Steve Smith or Josh Inglis?
I think you've hit the nail on the head by mentioning quick bowlers, because that seemed to be where the focus was in this mini auction. Either fast bowlers or young Indian talent. So both Cummings and Stark were able to command very high fees. Their sort of partner in crime, Josh Hazlewood, you would have thought would get a look in, but I think for personal reasons, not being available the first part of the tournament probably counted against him. I'm not surprised. Steve Smith's not in there. I mean, his T20 record isn't as late, hasn't been that good.
Subas, which teams, in your opinion, had good auctions and which ones, if any, fell short?
I think Sunrisers Hyderabad and Chennai Super Kings had a very good auction, especially after acquisition of Head for that amount and getting Pat Cummins. I think that's a big win. It's a pity that only 4 overseas players will be playing, and Daniel Vettori is going to be having a severe selection headache there. Chennai, on the other hand, got Rachin for just 1.8 crores, and Gujarat sniping Azmat Omarzai for his brace price. I think that's daylight robbery there. On the other hand, KKR, I think they got Stark, and still they are one bowler short. As we spoke in earlier podcast, they wanted 1 or 2 pace bowlers and ran out of funds after raining money over Stark. RCB went on the same line and ended up paying massive 11 crores on Alzari. I think the motto of this auction was, if you're pace, you're getting paid.
Yes, it seems that way, doesn't it? And we've got that tournament to look forward to as a build-up to the T20 World Cup that comes up in the middle of the year. Let's chat now about the Asian Cricket Council Under-19 Asia Cup, which wrapped up in Dubai on Sunday, the 17th of December, with a final I think no one was expecting, as Bangladesh beat the UAE by 195 runs to secure their first title in the tournament's history. A history that goes back to 1989, although the tournament has only been played regularly since 2003. A reminder that the tournament involved 8 teams, 6 of which are off to South Africa for next year's ICC Cricket World Cup, while the UAE and Japan, who were the surprise package as qualifiers in the first place, they're the ones to miss that tournament in Southern Africa in January and February of next year. John, the semi-finals saw Bangladesh defeat India and the UAE overcome Pakistan. So it wasn't quite the dream final the organisers might have been hoping for, but it was still a terrific tournament, wasn't it? And what a great performance by Bangladesh.
Yes, for both India and Pakistan to be defeated in semis was quite extraordinary. I think it does indicate there's some seriously good talent at this level. Terrific performance by Bangladesh, and especially by their opener, Shibli, who swept the UAE away on the day.
Subas, what about the UAE? They beat Sri Lanka in the group stages and Pakistan in the semi-finals before perhaps the occasion got to them a little in the final, but it still must be so encouraging for them. And what a shame they're not going to be going to the ICC Under-19 Cricket World Cup, as they were beaten to the punch there by Nepal.
Yeah, that match itself, I think UAE would be looking back at that match. I think they got denied by Dipesh Karel's magical hat trick at the end. UAE had that game on their grasp, but I think their quality was in the Under-19 Asia Cup. They gave tough fight to test teams, got some wins. I think Ayan Afzal Khan has been real revelation for the UAE cricket. He's performing by the senior team as well, leading the Under-19s really well, and there are a lot of talents to look out for in the senior side as well. I think Aryan Sharma is one to look out. I think Dev Parasar, he's still waiting for his chances. And UAE cricket, I think the future is bright. Sad they will not be going to the World Cup, but I think there's a good domestic setup and tournaments in place for these youngsters to show their talents.
Couple of news lines for you now from the ILT20, the UAE's own 2020 franchise tournament. The first is that the event has secured List A status for this second edition, which means that the runs scored and the wickets taken will count in players' official T20 records. That wasn't the case in the first edition. Secondly, Afghanistan seam bowler Naveen ul Haq has been banned from the competition for 20 months following a contract dispute with the side he played for in Season 1, the Sharjah Warriors. Naveen was retained on the same terms as he secured in season 1, but refused to accept them, and after the Warriors approached the league to resolve the dispute, and following deliberation, this ban is the result. It's quite a blow for Naveen, given on the eve of the ICC Cricket World Cup, he announced he was quitting all but the T20 form of the game. But with so many other tournaments on around the world at the same time, providing he can secure a no objection certificate from the Afghanistan Cricket Board, he should still be able to find cricket for himself. Let's look ahead now to what the next week has in store. Finally, as we always do, what are your plans for this week, cricket-wise, gentlemen, and what are you looking forward to? Subas, first of all?
It's going to be the PM Cup Women's Tournament for me here in Nepal. Top 8 teams of Nepal are playing, so I'll be busy on that one.
Great news there that there's such a significant tournament for women in Nepal. Jon, what about your perspective? What are you looking forward to?
It's a bit of a fallow time, really, so I can only look very far afield. I guess the next match of the Australia-Pakistan series is going to be one to look at to see if Pakistan can have some sort of resurgence.
Well, that's all to look forward to in the future. But in the meantime, thanks very much for joining us here at the Wicket, our whistle-stop trip around the world of this wonderful sport. We'll be back soon with more cricket chat from the Gulf region, Asia and worldwide. Please don't forget to like, subscribe and comment on what you've heard. Wherever you get your podcast, we'd love to hear your feedback and let us know if there's anything you'd like us to feature in future episodes. For now, though, this is Brian Murgatroyd along with Jon Pike and Subas Humagain saying thanks so much for listening, and we look forward to your company next time.